Have you ever wondered what the perfect society would actually look like? I mean, really thought about it? Today, we're going to explore three of the most influential blueprints ever drawn up to answer that exact question: liberalism, Marxism, and feminism. This is the one question that's really behind almost every major debate we have, whether it's about taxes or human rights. For centuries, some of the most brilliant thinkers have wrestled with this, and their answers have literally shaped the world we're all living in today. So let's think about these theories not as dry academic ideas, but as competing blueprints, detailed plans for how power, justice, and freedom could actually work. And we're going to start with the one that built a huge chunk of the modern world. First up is the liberal tradition. This is the one that has fundamentally shaped so much of Western society, and it puts the free individual right at the very center of its entire design. At its absolute core, liberalism is a pretty radical idea that the individual matters more than the king, more than the state. It came out of the Enlightenment and was a direct challenge to centuries of absolute rule. The argument was simple but powerful. Every single person has inherent rights that no government on earth can take away. And these principles, they create this incredible chain reaction. It all starts with the individual, who's born with natural rights. Okay, so to protect those rights, the government's power has to be deliberately limited. And that creates a system that's governed by the rule of law, not just the whims of a ruler, which in turn allows for things like free markets and, ideally, equal treatment for everyone. John Locke, who's often called the father of liberalism, just nailed it with this quote. He said the whole point of having laws isn't to hold us back, but to create the very structure that makes real freedom possible for everyone. But, and this is a big but, is that freedom really available to all of us equally? And that question leads us directly to our next blueprint. The Marxist critique looks at that liberal world and asks, what if all this talk about individual freedom is really just a smokescreen? It shifts our focus away from the individual and puts it squarely on the class struggle. This is the core challenge that Marxism throws down. It asks, what good is freedom if the economic system you're stuck in is fundamentally unfair? I mean, if you're a worker with very little power, are you truly as free as the person who owns the factory? So for Marxists, the real story of society isn't about individual rights at all. It's about who owns the stuff. They see history as this constant conflict between two main groups: the bourgeoisie, the ones who own the factories and the capital, and the proletariat, the workers who have nothing to sell but their own labor. The Marxist argument basically unfolds in 4 steps. First, the economy is the foundation of everything in society. That's an idea called historical materialism. Second, because of that economic base, people are inevitably divided into these warring classes. Third, the state, we're talking the government, the courts, all of it, isn't some neutral referee. No, it's a tool used by the rich to protect their own power. And the logical conclusion from all that? The only way to get real justice is for the workers to lead a revolution and upend the entire system. But what if both of these blueprints, the one focused on the individual and the one focused on class, what if they both miss something even more fundamental? Well, that brings us to our third plan, the feminist challenge, which famously argues that the personal is political. This is the really powerful question that feminism brings to the table. It looks at a world that's obsessed with public life, with laws and factories, and it asks, wait a minute, what about gender? What about the power structures that shape our private lives, inside our own homes and relationships? The key concept here, the big one, is patriarchy. Feminism identifies this as a system where society is basically structured by male dominance, and it argues that this whole system needs to be understood, exposed, and taken apart if we're ever going to achieve true equality. And this is where feminism really changes the game. It completely redefines what politics even means. Power isn't just in parliaments and boardrooms, it's in the family. And crucially, feminism gave us the concept of intersectionality, this groundbreaking idea that you can't just separate the fight for gender equality from the fights against racism or classism because they are all deeply interconnected. This famous line from Simone de Beauvoir really gets to the heart of it. What she was arguing is that womanhood isn't some biological thing you're just born with. Instead, it's a set of expectations and roles that society teaches you and forces you to perform. And it's so important to know that feminism isn't just one single thing. For example, liberal feminists believe you can get to equality by working within the existing system, getting a seat at the table. But radical feminists would say that's not nearly enough. For them, the whole table of patriarchy needs to be flipped over and completely rebuilt from scratch. So we've got our three blueprints. One's focused on individual rights, one on class war, and one on gender justice. Now, for the really revealing part, let's put them all side by side and see how they give us three completely different lenses for looking at the world. This is where the differences just snap right into focus. By comparing them on the exact same issues, we can see the unique and powerful insight that each one brings to the conversation. Okay, let's just take a second here, because these contrasts are amazing. First, let's look at the main focus. For liberalism, it's all about the individual. For Marxism, it's the economic class. For feminism, it's gender. Right away, their starting points are worlds apart. Now, what about their view of the state? Liberals tend to see it as a neutral protector. Marxists call it a weapon used by the ruling class. And feminists see it as an institution designed to keep patriarchy in power. This leads to totally different goals, right? Liberals want liberty. Marxists want a classless society. Feminists are fighting for gender justice, which means their methods have to be different. Liberalism prefers gradual reform. Marxism calls for a total revolution. And feminism demands a deep structural social transformation. It's like three different diagnoses, leading to three radically different cures. So why do these old ideas still matter so much? Because honestly, understanding them helps us build a much more complete picture of the world we're actually living in right now. The biggest takeaway here is that you don't have to pick a side. The smartest way to look at this is to treat these theories like different tools in a toolkit. Each one is designed for a different job, and each one reveals something the others just can't see. Think about it. Liberalism gives us the essential language of rights and freedoms. Marxism forces us to look at economic injustice and how wealth really shapes power. And feminism makes us aware of all the subtle and not-so-subtle ways that gender inequality structures our entire lives. You really need all three to get a 3D view of society. So we'll leave you with this question. As you look at the world around you, the news, your job, your community, which one of these lenses helps you understand it best? The answer is probably going to change depending on what you're looking at. And knowing which lens to use and when, well, that's the real power of understanding these blueprints for society.